Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I am so excited to record this guest podcast episode with Karilyn Ivers. Karilyn is a former client. We worked together for about 4 months, but she has such an amazing story. Even before coming to work with me, she is a coach as well, had done a ton of work and divorced, now happily engaged.
Married.
Oh, I missed that. Wait. Oh my God. Okay. I should just get into it. Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and what is happening?
Maybe the best part about the story is just how quickly things have happened this year. It's blown my mind.
I was like engaged, and then I was like, oh, should I talk about the big news? And I was like, oh no. It's like, it's out of my hands now. So good. All right. Introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know all about you.
Yes. My name is Karilyn Ivers Tracy. Update. I am a life coach. I work with partners of those who are struggling with addiction. And that's sort of my background. That wasn't part of my marriage or divorce, but it was the relationship that happened right after that. And so that was about 4 years ago, got divorced 4 years ago. And so that threw me into this insane personal development journey. And by the time I got to you, I had done so much work, but like still felt like the result I wanted was like just out of my reach. Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? I've been doing this for so long. I am finally going to hire a dating coach. And this year, it's happening. And little did I know how important that intention was.
Yeah. So good. So let's talk a little bit about the divorce. So you got divorced 4 years ago. How long were you married, and what was that journey like?
Yeah. So I got married when I was 20 years old. We started dating when I was 17. And we were married for 10 years. And it was one of those where, everyone thought we had the best marriage. And maybe even he and I thought we did too, because we never really fought. And if we did, it was over very quickly. We both moved on very fast. Little did I didn't know this at the time, but not ever fighting is a sign of so one of you is lying about what you want in life. Like if you're never having conflict, that means one of you is, or both. I was a huge people pleaser. I was very codependent. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know what that was. But in the last 6 months of our marriage, actually, we decided, there's so much to the story. I had wanted to have kids this entire 10 years, and it just kept let's keep waiting. Let's wait a little bit more time. Let's wait. And then finally, when I turned 30, I was like, yo, this is happening. And he was like, okay, but there was kind of a little catch, and there was some emotional manipulation there. And I finally got to the point where I was like, oh, wow, there's been a lot of control happening, probably on both of our parts, but it just wasn't a good mix. And I was like, I don't like this. I don't want this.
So did it come out that he did not want kids at that point?
It wasn't about him not wanting kids. It was about him wanting control over me and my body and the perception of our, he was very aware of how things looked. So he had an image that he always wanted to keep. And even though, I had never gained more than 10 pounds in our marriage, it's he was very worried about that and very concerned. So it was okay, you got to commit to a certain workout program if I'm going to agree to this. And that was just kind of a, wow. And so
and it's amazing what we can miss, you know, like along the way.
Been like that the entire time I'd known him, but it never came to that point. You know, you can be in a dynamic for so long and not realize how unhealthy it is because you just adapt and you just make it work because, you know, your beliefs about how things should be. Divorce was never an option in my mind. Nobody in my family was divorced. So I was the first one and my entire extended family to get divorced. So it was a pretty big deal. But after that discussion, things kind of took a turn and somehow, I don't, it's a weird story, but somehow we decided to have an open relationship after that, which seems very at odds with my goal of having kids. And it was. But all the inner workings of the universe, it happened exactly the way it should. In that 6 months, I'm dating other men. He's dating, and you would think that's weird if someone has a lot of control issues. Why would they want to have an open relationship? But it worked out in the fact that it didn't work out. So I was having all these experiences with other people, and I was being treated in a much different way. Like I was being respected, and people were asking about my boundaries and very respectful of my boundaries. And that was very much a contrast to what I had known for the last 10 years. And people were like so emotionally intelligent and very open to hard conversations. And they apologized when they were wrong, which was a new thing for me.
Yeah.
So it was just like, you know, the wool had lifted from my eyes and I realized this is not what I want. And I knew that I could choose to work on this and change it. Like, I don't think it's beyond working through. It's just a matter of being aware of your patterns and, you know, therapy and all that stuff. But I decided that I didn't want to.
Yeah. I mean, and I can see like at 17.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just really hard to know all. Like we live in a culture, and I think this is a global culture. I don't know that there's any culture where, you know, mental health and personality disorders and healthy relationships are discussed openly when you're a teenager in your early 20s.
Nope, not at all.
So, you know, so without that education at 17, you picked a partner and you were just in that, I guess, bubble with him for 13 years.
Yep.
Yeah. You just didn't know what you didn't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a huge realization. And so it was my decision. He absolutely did not want to get divorced, which makes it, he wanted to close the relationship again and do therapy and all that stuff. And I was like, I think it's too little too late for that. I'm not interested in this dynamic anymore. And I don't even want to work on it. And I allowed myself to like, that was a good enough reason because I don't want to.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I know that's shocking. I know there was a time when that would have been shocking to me to be like, yeah, you just get to do what you want to do for you. And if what you choose is to abide by certain rules or values that you have chosen, the key is, did you choose them? Are you choosing this thing that you believe in, or that you want to adhere to, or that you want to work through? And I think that's where freedom really comes in. It's not that whether or not you decided to stay or you decided to leave, is that you chose for you and you exercised your own right and your own freedom to make that decision for yourself. Yeah.
And in that dynamic, I can say if we had had children at that point, I absolutely would have stayed and worked through that, just because that's my personal value of what I want for my kids. Because of the foundation that we had, it wasn't beyond hope. It just wasn't what I wanted. So, but
was it hard on your family to have a divorce happen?
Yes. But they were all immediately supportive. So while they didn't agree with it, also they didn't know most of the story because I didn't want to, well, anyway, I didn't want to have those conversations. And it was a big thing of like, you know, him being very worried about things being said about him and how that would affect me. And so, I just didn't really tell people why in depth. But it was just like, yep, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
And I was very clear from the beginning, which felt a little bit differently about it later, but I was like, you know, I have cousins that were really close and my family was all very close to him. Like my cousins are all younger than me. They grew up with him in their lives. They have their own relationship with him. And so I told them all, you don't have to choose sides. You have your own relationship with him. What you do is up to you. Now later, when my little cousin invited him to her wedding, I'm like, okay, that's not really what I meant.
You're like, you can have a relationship with him, but not this close. Come on. You know this.
So yes, there's some irritations about that later, but it is what it is. And I, moved on from that. So it was difficult for them, but they were all very supportive of me and it wasn't really that dramatic.
That's amazing. Yeah. I love that. That's so good. That's not the case for many other women who get divorced. So let's talk about your relationship journey because I really want to get to the good part.
This is the fun part.
I want to get to the end where you tell me all the things that are happening right now. So I'm trying to pace myself. Okay, so you went back out to date after the divorce, or did you just continue with the open relationships? What happened next?
So there was one person I met during that period of open relationship that I definitely fell for hard. And I did a lot of thinking about like, I do not want to leave my marriage for this person. Like that is not what I want to happen. So I made the decision, like, even if this person and I broke up tomorrow, I would still want a divorce. And I had to be very clear with myself about that. It's not about the other person. It is really about our dynamic, and that's not what I want. So, but I did keep dating that person, and it was very important to my life story that I did that. So I don't regret that at all. Because he was the one who struggled with addiction. And that is what propelled me into changing my whole life career to be a life coach. And now that's what I do. And it's like so important, such important work that I do that my clients like are changing their lives because of that. And I would never be able to make this kind of an impact if I didn't have that experience. So very grateful for that.
It sounds like you didn't know you were codependent or a people pleaser yet at this point.
I knew about codependency, but it was very new. I had just found out about that. So I knew about it in the context of my marriage, but I didn't really see how that played out in other relationships. I didn't know how that would play out in other relationships. So it was made worse in this relationship because he struggled with addiction. So I was really going into like, I want to control him and make myself safe by making sure he's not getting high or doing all those things. And typical codependent addiction relationship.
Yeah. Well, when you say typical, a lot of listeners may not know what that is. Like I know, because I have, worked with women and studied extensively about it, but like, what is that emotional experience like when you're with someone who is addicted, who is controlled by this other thing outside of the relationship?
So to give context, I was never taught to be my own sense of safety and security. I wasn't really brought up to be independent. I was raised in a very religious house. And so the Bible verse, lean not under your own understanding, was like plowed into my brain. Like basically the essence is you can't trust yourself, so trust the people outside of you and the people who are telling you what to do and how to be. So I went from being dependent on my parents to going to college, but I was still in a relationship with him. And then we got married when I was 20. So then I went to being dependent on him. And I had never lived by myself. I'd never paid all my own bills. Like that was not my life. So I was taught to use someone else as my sense of security. Yeah. So when I find myself in a relationship with someone who struggles with addiction, they are, their coping mechanism for their own life is to numb out, to use something that changes their ability to be present and show up. And I was like so in love with him that that was just my pattern, is like, oh, now you're my sense of security. But he couldn't even handle his own emotions, his own life. He couldn't show up for himself. So when I put my sense of security in someone who is unstable, that's very destabilizing. And sure, the option is there to leave, but it did not feel like an option.
Yeah.
And that's what my clients love that I can relate to, is it does not feel like a choice. It feels like you are literally attached to this other person and you cannot let them go.
Yeah. It feels like
it's its own addiction.
Like it's its own addiction, because it's like, well, in order for me to exist as a person, like I wasn't in a relationship with someone who had addiction issues, but my ex was definitely had mental health issues and control issues and low functioning due to bipolar at times. But because my sense, because I also struggled with codependence, was, well, if he's not okay and he's the he's the security, then I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And in this crazy, weird, warped way, it's like, I got to make him okay.
So that I can be okay. Yes. Which, other people are like, why don't you just make yourself okay and leave them alone?
Like, you don't understand.
Yeah, that's not how our brains were wired.
Yes.
So it's just how how my brain was literally taught to function, was in that way. And it wasn't meant to be in that dysfunctional way, but that's certainly how it showed up in my life. So,
yeah. Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, shadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates, so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to shadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode. Yeah. So how did, at what point did you realize, okay, I need to do something different? Like, this isn't working and I need to change.
Like the umpteenth relapse. And his drug of choice was heroin and then meth. And then very common when people are using meth, they also have a lot of sexual compulsions. So he was getting his meth from sex workers and then sleeping with them. And that was his relapse. It wasn't just like drinking. It was, knife to the heart every time. But my brain was still thinking, and there's also this whole thing around addiction is a disease and they have no choice. And so I was like, oh, well, I have to stand by him and help him and take care of him. And if anyone out here is listening to this, go read the book, The Freedom Model of Addiction. And there's some helpful insights there. But anyway, that was my view of it. So I was like, finally got to the point where I either have to leave or I have to stop trying to control him and get help for myself. Like, go to therapy or get a coach or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was not ready to leave, which again sounds crazy from the outside point of view, but this is the experience of so many people.
Yeah.
And all of my clients have the same experience. So I hired a coach for myself, and learned how to stop trying to control him and just focus on my own boundaries. That was very hard, but I kept practicing at that. And then through some of that coaching, decided that I wanted to become a life coach. And so then I started to get certified at the life coach school, and all that work helped with my thoughts create my feelings, and I get to decide how I think about all this, and I don't need to control another person in order for me to be happy, and started building up my self-confidence and practicing boundaries. And
could you give an example of like a moment where you had to, because I remember walking through my own recovery journey. Like my divorce took several years to finalize. So a lot of that was spent, like I did 12 steps, I did coaching, I did all the things.
Yeah.
And I remember certain moments where I was like literally holding my boundaries. Like I'm like, yeah, this is the moment. I'm like, do you remember any situations where you were like literally watching yourself stay within your boundaries?
The most significant time was when I was over at his apartment, and I think he had recently got fired from his job, and I had left work to go be with him because I didn't want him to use. And so, I used myself as the Band-Aid for his emotions. I was like, I need to make sure he doesn't use. He did anyway. And like he was high on meth, and I'm there hanging out at his apartment. And if you've never seen anyone on meth, they're just like, it's an upper. They're very happy. They're very focused. They're very, he was like cleaning the house, and like, it's not like heroin. Heroin's a downer, and they just, kind of like droop and pass out. But on meth, it's like, they're very, oddly functional. So he's happy, joking, cleaning his apartment, getting stuff done, writing to-do lists and all this stuff. And you would think that would be fine, but the vibe was just so off. The energy in the room was so uncomfortable for me. And I was like, Karilyn, what are you doing? Like, I'm sitting here, and he was just in the bathroom shooting up meth. And it's just like, what has my life become? And it just felt so bad to me that I was like, I just have to go home. I have to go to my apartment. And so I just started to gather my things a little bit. And he looked over and he's like, are you leaving me? And I said, I just don't feel good about this. I don't feel good in this moment. I need a break. So I'm going to go home for a while. And home for me was like a mile away from his apartment. So it's not like, I was leaving his life forever, but I just basically said, I need a break. And after I said that, I kind of went in the bathroom and just sat on the ground and cried. I was going to leave, but I just needed a moment to cry. And then I hear him on the phone with his insurance company inquiring about how to get assessed for addiction treatment. And I was like, damn, okay. That's not what I was trying to do. I was not like, I didn't ask him to do anything different. I wasn't shaming him for having gotten high. I wasn't like blaming him for making me sad. All I said was just very neutral. This doesn't feel good. I need a break. And so I was like, whoa, boundaries can feel really good.
Yeah. And it's when you haven't started to set boundaries and hold them, when people say, well, they will either change or leave, it's so hard to imagine what do you mean they're just going to suddenly decide to change or leave without me telling them and making them. But this is exactly what it looks like, because energetically, in your voice, in the timbre of your voice, in the action you were taking, which was probably different from what you'd ever done.
Yep.
There is a message in that.
Yeah.
But you can't set out to send the message.
Right. That cannot be the intent. And it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, when you let go of all that control, then sometimes you're pleasantly surprised about getting the exact thing you would have wanted.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean he stayed sober forever, and we did eventually part ways. And that was both of our decision. But that was a very important relationship for me in my life and my story. And obviously now that's what I do for a living, is help other people in that situation. But yeah, that was one of the first bound. And then in the dating process after that, I just got more clear, and it was so much easier to say no when things didn't feel good to me. Mm-hmm. And then it was weird because then I'd date some guys that were like super nice. On paper, probably hear this all the time. On paper, they were perfect. And they're perfect for me. It's like, there's no reason why I shouldn't want to like fall in love with this person. But that happened several times where I just wasn't feeling it. Mm-hmm. But like and they'd be a great person. We'd even make out. And it was like, chemistry was great. But still something it was just like, it's a no for me. And so that was uncomfortable, saying no when I didn't really have a good, quote unquote, good reason to, just because I knew intuitively it's not a good fit. And then getting a little pushback from them.
It's hilarious how like, it's not a good fit just doesn't seem to be a valid reason for a woman to say no. Like, we can say no if we just don't feel like being with this particular guy. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. Learning that was very empowering.
Yeah.
And most of the time when I had those conversations, it was met with, okay, well, thank you for being honest. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it was like, well, what? You led me on, or like, what's wrong? There's nothing wrong. Like, what happened? I'm just like, you're right. There is nothing. Something doesn't have to be wrong in order for in order for me to decide this isn't a good fit for me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So when you reached out for a consult, because I've worked with one of your friends, mm-hmm. why were you looking for help with dating at that point?
So after that relationship, I probably dated for, I don't know, a year and a half, but there was a good 6 months there that I didn't date on purpose because there was another relationship with someone who was a compulsive liar. And after 5 months, I found out he had been lying to me the whole time and was cheating on me. And that like wrecked me. And so I did some coaching work with a breakup coach. That was a lot of stuff. And then took a little break, reset. And then I started dating again. And I was reading some books about how to date intentionally. And so I had started doing that for a while. But I felt like it wasn't going fast enough or like something was still missing, or I don't know. But I know from being a coach and working with coaches, if you want a result and you want it faster, hire a coach. So
and I think sometimes there's a misconception with like dating coaches, and there are certain dating coaches. Usually I work with their clients after where it's just, I'm going to teach you how to create a dating profile and I'm going to swipe on your behalf. I do not do any of those things, just FYI, people. I do teach you how to create a dating profile, but many of the women that I work with already know the basics of creating a dating profile, of swiping. So it's not she's just going to teach me how to swipe and then, the hows of it. Like for women who are high achieving and high functioning and brilliant like yourself, it's like if I'm doing all the things and there's something else, maybe I just want someone else to take a look at what's going on and give me their own thoughts or tell me what I'm thinking or what they see, which is literally what happened with you. It was hilarious what happened. All right, I'll let you tell them. So tell them what happened. We did a consult.
So right before I hired you, I decided to move across the country from Oregon to Tennessee. This was a very seemingly random universe moment, just kind of telling me to go. And I just did. It was a very intuitive thing. And so I did that. And I was there for maybe a month or two. And I was like, okay, it's time. It's time to start dating and gonna get a coach. And so I got on the apps before I even contacted you, I think. And I had my first date with the first person ever in Tennessee the day before the consult with you. Mm-hmm. And that was with Travis, who is my husband now. He is the only person I went on a date with when I moved here. And so that's kind of special. Yeah. And I didn't date anyone else during that process, which I had intended to, but just didn't work out that way. So I had my first date with him the night before and went really well, obviously. So basically we had a consult and it just felt like, I love you and I love your whole perspective and like, you're such a good coach. And I was feeling like, not like hopeless. Like before, when I reached out to coaches, I was in the pits of despair and I was like, please help me deal with my life. But with you, I was like, I was already feeling empowered and I was already starting the momentum of this shift. But my intention was, okay, let me just get support, even though it's not a struggle, really. Mm-hmm. But I just want it to be the best experience it can. And I want it to be the quickest experience that I can. I think on our consult, my goal was to be married and maybe pregnant within the year.
Exactly. That's exactly what you said.
Yeah. And I wasn't even sure if that was possible, but I was like, it is what I want. I don't know if it's possible, but it's what I want. So,
and I think that's the power of intention, of the power of being like, yeah, I really want this. And I always encourage women to like, listen, if you want it, like say that you want it.
Yes.
Like for real, like if you, and a lot of times, especially after divorce and if we're older and all the things, it's like, I'm not allowed to say I want this. For some of my clients who initiated their divorces, especially when their ex-husbands didn't want them, they often feel like I don't deserve another relationship because of what I did in my first one. And I'm just like, listen, if you want something, just allow yourself to say you want it, because that's the beginning of getting it.
Yeah. And so working with you was part of adding to that, like letting myself have that desire. Like, yeah, I can have it or I can want it and I can allow support that will help me get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you continued dating Travis. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that came up during that dating journey? And we know like wedded bliss now, wedded bliss.
Yeah.
But, you went through, and a lot of what we went through together was like the last part of my program, which is when you haven't had great relationships before, a lot of things that happen in a good relationship can feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes. So, let's see. Certainly one of the things that came up was, me wrestling with what is an acceptable relationship with alcohol look like and what isn't. Because prior to being with someone who struggled with addiction, it wasn't really a thought in my mind. I didn't care if people drank. I didn't care if they drank every day. Like if they're functioning and I don't know, they're a good person, like it doesn't matter. But I was just a lot more sensitive to it at this point. I don't really drink. I drink, I don't know, maybe once or twice a month pre-pregnancy. I'm pregnant. I don't know if I said that yet.
For the end. All right. Cat's out of the bag. Karilyn's pregnant. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Married. Met the guy. Worked through everything. Got engaged. Now married and pregnant.
Yes.
All the things.
Oh my goodness.
All the boxes in 1 year.
Yeah. So there were definitely a few big triggers that came up for me, and that was one of them. And you sort of helped me just decide like what's okay with you and what's not, because you're the only one that gets to decide that. There's no objective, this is healthy and this is not healthy, or like this is okay and this is not okay, or you should be afraid of this or you shouldn't worry about it. It was just, I just get to decide. And also I don't have to care about it.
Yeah.
I just don't have to make it a problem at all. Yeah. And he's just a social drinker, like just your average American male. I don't know if that's even a thing, but maybe you know what I mean.
But the cliche, the stereotype.
Yeah. Yeah. Grab a beer with friends. Yes. Yeah. Whiskey sometimes. But anyway. So that was one big trigger. There was another one. But I was able to successfully see that I'm triggered by this, and it's not because of the thing. It's because of my story and my perception. And now I don't have to worry about making the right choice. All I have to do is decide what I want to do, which was pretty important for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember a couple of other things that I know came up. One was just, I think you kind of mentioned it, like trust, just the ability to trust him as a human.
Yeah.
We work through that. And then the other one was judgment. Like you had certain judgments of yourself.
Yes.
Around money and around.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
I'm just going to tell all your business now. And around fitness. And to your credit, you were always aware. Like you always came to the coaching calls. Like, I'm feeling like he should be doing this or he should be doing that and this about him. But I'm also suspecting that this is something I'm creating. So what do you think? You know, we would work through it. You always came super aware of your own thoughts and the way your brain worked and kind of like what your brain had a tendency to do.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing about working with you was working out the kinks in my ability to be in a healthy relationship now. Because I've done all the stuff to heal, but I hadn't yet been in a healthy relationship and known what that was like in this new like life and perspective that I have. So that was probably the biggest thing of what it's like for two imperfect humans to be in a healthy relationship and navigate that.
Yeah. And for many of us,
the hardest thing.
Dysfunctional relationships, sometimes we swing all the way to the other side of the pendulum, which is like, it's got to be perfect.
Yeah.
If it's not perfect, then there's a problem. It's going to be terrible. It's either terrible, like abusive or addiction and all those things, or it's perfect, like the storybooks, like the pictures in the marriage books and all of those things. It's not really either one of those because you're going to be imperfect. And you didn't have to do this because you were in a relationship kind of from the get-go. A lot of my clients who are like single or coming just out of their marriages, I'm always like, do you even know what like regular guys look like?
Yeah.
Right? Because there's something about marriage that just kind of puts us in this bubble with just our husbands and our brothers. And, so there's very small circle of men.
What we know.
What we know. And I'm like, you really might need, which is why dating practice is really good so that you get to see what men look like, what they smell like, how they talk.
How they act.
How they
are around the house.
Yeah, because they're very human.
Yeah.
They're very human. And we have to expand our capacity and our ability to like be with their humanity while expressing ours. And of course, for a lot of us codependents and perfectionists, we're trying really hard not to be human.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So tell us a little bit about your journey from, okay, we're dating. Like, I just got to know this person, to I'm falling in love. I'm exclusive with this person. I want to marry this person. Like, I want to do forever, if possible, with this human being.
Yeah. So I came into that relationship with a very long checklist of like, what are all the things I want and what are all the questions I need to ask in order to find out if he embodies these things. And I do not feel bad about that. That was a great thing on my part. Some people are like, don't have a checklist, but I'm like, why, how else would I know what to ask?
You definitely need a checklist, but you need the right checklist.
Yes.
A checklist based on a celebrity or a movie is a terrible checklist.
This was like about compatibility, like true compatibility of our personalities and what we want for our lives. Are we going in the same direction naturally? Like my big thing was I don't want to have to change someone to fit what I want. I want to find someone who naturally wants the same things that I want. So first date, I'm asking, what do you want from the dating experience? What do you want in a relationship? Do you want to get married? Do you want to have kids? How soon do you want to have kids? How soon do you want to get married? Because I had a timeline and I don't want to force anybody to be in that timeline. I want to find someone who also wants that timeline.
So what was Travis's response to all of this?
He loved it. He loved all the questions I was asking. I would openly discuss any discomfort or like conflict in my mind. And I was very clear with boundaries. Like the first time he invited me over to his house, before I came over, I said, just so you know, sex is not on the table for me. That's not a thing. We're not doing that. But I would love to, making out is on the table.
Yeah, and I love that you said that ahead of time. Like that is so powerful because you were in your own experience and in the experience that you wanted to have that day. You weren't worried about the experience he wanted to have. You were like, it's up to you to decide what experience you're wanting to have.
Yeah.
And express that, but this is mine.
Yes. I didn't care what he wanted at that point. I was like, letting you know, this is what's happening. And he was like, thank you so much for saying that, because it took a huge weight off of my shoulders and it calmed me down. I had less anxiety going into that. Like I was so much more comfortable. And that's the biggest feedback that he gave me in this early process is I love how much you communicate everything. Like not just your expectations, but your boundaries and like what you like and what you're looking for. So that was a green flag for me that he liked that about me. So he loved all the questions I had. He really liked that process. And through that, we found out like we do want the same things, and that's exciting. Yeah. So then
how did you know you were in love?
Oh man, that's a good question, actually. I don't know if I have an answer to that, actually. It's been such a whirlwind. Maybe that's, I don't know if it's not good or bad, but one of the aspects of having such a quick dating into marriage is that like the focus shifts so quickly on the relationship. And now that's the new phase we're navigating. But I think I didn't really let myself even get there until I knew for sure that we were compatible on like every level that I wanted to be compatible on. It's like I was letting myself have fun and be vulnerable and be open, but I was very much like, I'm not going to fall in love with this person unless it's a good fit. It wasn't necessarily a conscious thing, but it was definitely a subconscious thing.
I have a theory. I mean, and this is what I teach my clients, is that we choose when to fall in love. And it's not always conscious, accurate. Like you said, but we have the ability to decide that we're ready to fall in love with this person. So I actually I walk my clients through gates who are dating. I'm like, this is where you allow yourself to fall in love because you just embodied that so perfectly. You did the groundwork while enjoying yourself, while dating, while flirting, while making out. And then somewhere along there, you're like, yeah, okay, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like knowing that this is a safe person was big for me. And then meeting his family, and I loved his family. And I think it was kind of a choice at that point. Like, okay, now I can fall in love with you. And then it's just, you just decide all the things you love about them. And
do you know when that happened? Like from when did you all meet? February?
We met at the end of January of this year.
End of January 2022. And when did that relationship move into like this? He's sort of the one, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
we became exclusive on Valentine's Day.
Okay, about a month.
Yep. So he had gone on a trip. So it was a lot of like texting, calling, that kind of thing. I think that's what, I don't remember if it was like a New York Times article, like an experiment of like, you have people on a first date, you ask all these questions and then they just fall in love with each other because of those questions. Yeah. That's basically what I had been doing.
Right. And well, one of the things, the article, and I think if you read the whole thing, they put a certain people with a certain amount of compatibility together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then give them the questions. Yeah. Because I've also, as a dating coach, I hear all kinds of things like, okay, so if I just ask these questions, I'm like, no, you can't just make anyone fall in love with you. Yes. You don't even want that.
Right. There's got to be a foundation there, a basis of compatibility. So
you were exclusive it was after a month.
Mm-hmm. And I'm
when
sure
did you know
I
wanted to do forever? Like about how long after that?
Not long. I mean, I saw the potential immediately. Mm-hmm. And then after every question I ask, I'm like, oh, okay. Still on the track.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like a momentum thing that just built slowly from the beginning.
Yeah. That's so good.
I think we started talking about getting married probably within 2 months of knowing each other. And then I was trying to like go down the list. What other milestones do we need to have before I say yes to a proposal from this person?
Yes.
One of those was like a road trip or like some sort of trip. So I took him to my friend's wedding in Kansas. So we went on a long road trip, just us. It was like, 18 hours or something. And I was like, okay, well, this will be a for sure, not a test, but yes, a test to see, he's meeting my friends for the first time and we're spending all this time together. It went really well. He loved my friends. They loved him, and it was her wedding. So her family was there and they loved him, and like getting to see him interact with new people was very important for me. How does he handle new situations that he's not comfortable in? How does he interact with people? It's basically a giant evaluation from the time I see his profile to the time I say yes to the ring. It's just, you still always evaluate, but that's really what I was intentionally doing.
Mm-hmm. So, I always tell my clients, like, listen, you can't just go on these fun dates and sit at fancy restaurants and get to know a person. Like, that's just one aspect of who they are. Like, well, he was very kind to the waitress. Yes, that's lovely. However, you're repeating the same evaluation over and over and over again. You're not learning more about the person. And so I always try to work with them to create situations, kind of like you said, like a road trip or a nephew's birthday party or church service or a conference, like things that let you see other aspects of this person so that you can appropriately observe and appropriately evaluate to see if they're right for you.
Yeah. So that trip went really well. And it's funny because my friend was talking about how they wanted to get pregnant really quickly. And he and I were with her like shopping in a little thing, and there were baby clothes. And she's like, okay, so he and I are going to get pregnant. So you guys need to get pregnant too pretty soon. And in my mind, I was like, oh girl, that's probably not going to happen for another year at least. But it was just a funny little foreshadowing moment.
Yeah.
So then the next big thing was my cousin's wedding in Texas. And my parents were going to drive down and pick me up, and we're going to road trip over to Texas. And this had been planned the whole time I had known him and had been talking about it. But then I finally felt like, okay, I feel comfortable inviting you on this thing. I don't know if you'll want to go on a road trip with my parents in the same car, but I'll ask you. So he said he'd love to. And we went on this trip, and we're in an Airbnb with my parents and my brother and his wife at my cousin's wedding. And my best friend had told me less than 2 weeks before that she was pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Good job. And she's like, okay, your turn. And I was like, okay, that's not happening. But when we got down there, I had been having period cramps for the last 3 days, but my period hadn't started yet, but it was supposed to. And sorry if this is TMI, but
it's okay. This is a podcast for women.
Yeah. I was so preoccupied with everything happening that when we got down there, I just realized all of a sudden I'm 3 days late for my period. We should probably go get a test. So we're in Texas within a tiny European room next to my parents and my brother. We are not engaged at this point. And it was not really on the roadmap for that soon. But we found a way to sneak out and go by ourselves to the store. And on the way, I'm still evaluating, being okay, well, how do you feel about this? How would you feel if it was positive? How would you feel if it was negative? And he's like, you know what? I'll be kind of disappointed if it's negative. I was like, wow. Hey, me too. So it's just interesting, the whole time evaluating how does he respond to life? How does he respond to me and my emotions and all of these things? And so he just kept passing tests with flying colors.
Yeah. And I remember because you had brought up the conversation of marriage, because I think when you and I had coached, you had those conversations. I know you were thinking about 2023.
Yeah.
Was kind of where, because we did milestones. Okay, what are your milestones? What would you need to know to achieve those? Blah, blah, blah. And so he had been receptive to your questions about just marriage and a family and all of those things.
Yeah. For him, it was okay, let's do it next year for financial reasons so we can plan and all of that. Of course, I was my ideal would be to get married this fall, but it's okay if it's next spring. That's fine too. Because that's still, soon. So we get back, I go in the bathroom, pee on this stick, and immediately it was positive. Wow. I was just in such an insane state of shock. Just I was happy, but I was so shocked. Never in a million years would I have expected that to be positive, because I never even got accidentally pregnant in that 10-year marriage. Never once was it even oops or anything like that. Yeah. So in the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking, I don't even know if I can get pregnant. It might not be a possibility for me.
Right.
So to be with this amazing guy, and then it just happened so effortlessly, and just the most beautiful little gift from the universe. And I was well, I must be on the right track, because when things start to happen like that, easy like that, it's just okay, I'm going down the right road. So I showed it to him, and he was shocked but overjoyed. And so that was kind of the shift in everything. It was oh God, he met my parents for the first time 2 days before.
Did you tell your parents?
We told them when we got back home, and I got them little onesies, and I wrote on it grandma's little love bug and grandpa's little buddy. And we got a little recording of me telling them, and they were just thrilled, so thrilled. Everyone is thrilled.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When are you due? Oh, I mean, I don't know if you want to put that on the podcast. You don't have to answer that. You can tell me after.
Early February 2023. Okay. So
that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. So excited.
Thanks.
So excited to have been a witness. Because I think this is the best part of my job, is to hold space in hopefulness and belief for my clients. And then to just be there for when it all happens. Oh my God. It's the best. It's the best thing.
Yeah. So he ordered the engagement ring the day we got back from that trip, but it took like a month to get there. And this whole time in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, why hasn't he proposed yet? Like, does he not want to get married for real? So I had a little bit of a meltdown one night about it. Not a meltdown, but I cried.
I think that fulfills the definition of a meltdown.
Yeah. So he was all stressed out trying to like play it down because he knew the ring was going to be there any day. So it came, I think, I don't know, less than a week later, and he proposed as soon as he got it in the mail, pretty much. He was like,
there it is.
And so I just bawled, and yeah. So we decided for a lot of reasons, one being that we wanted to, we just went ahead and got married at the beginning of this month. And
congratulations. I'm so happy for you. And I think this is like such a testament to the work that you've done. Both the work you did before you and I worked together, the work you did, when we worked together, like all of it. You are definitely an embodiment of like, I'm gonna fix this problem no matter what.
Yes.
Right. Like just opening up yourself to all of that work and examining your own thoughts and your own feelings and your own patterns, and being willing to experience the discomfort of changing them, of doing something different, even though it's scary. Because I remember, I know the story might sound very easy when you're trying to put it all in like this, 1 hour episode. But there were moments where you were very concerned, where you had a lot of thoughts, where you worried about the future, where you worried about how you were going to know if he was the one, and, make that decision, and, not wanting, another divorce, especially if you were going to have kids with this person, and all of that. So, I just want to acknowledge you for like being willing to do the work. This is what the work looks like, right? Sometimes we don't know. Like, I mean, before my divorce, I thought I was like I knew I wasn't keeping up with like my little personal development books and like things, but I thought I was like a reasonably, developed, conscious person. I was not anything like that.
Oh my God, no.
No.
So even though it feels like things happen so fast this year, it's because I've been working at this for 4 years consciously, but many years before that. But yeah, for 4 years since I got divorced, I have been going through it.
You had coach after coach. You've
so hard. Yes. So many tears, so many hopeless nights where I really felt like I'm never going to be able to trust a man again. I'm never going to find a healthy relationship because I'm broken, and now I'll always be triggered by things, and I'll always have these reactions. And there were definitely times where I felt like it's not going to happen for me. But eventually I always came back to the feeling of commitment. Like, yes, it's hard, but guess what? I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going until I create what I want, even if that never happens.
You can't lose if you don't quit.
Right. So I think that decision, it's like the commitment with the intention, with the prep work, is what made it happen so fast, from meeting in January to married in August.
Oh my God, so good. That's the title of this podcast. January, married in August. This has been such an amazing story. You deserve all the happiness. Congratulations. And I know from working with divorced women for many years now that a gigantic portion of them have experienced what you've experienced in your early relationships with addiction, whether it's, addictions of all kinds. So I really, please tell the audience, like, what you do, how you work with these women, where they can find you and connect with you if they're experiencing it in a current relationship or in a past relationship, and they want to kind of get through all of that stuff. And let us know what programs you are offering, if you're offering any right now, and how they can work with you.
Yeah, so you can find me at KarilynIvers.com, and you can find the spelling of my name in the show notes, I'm sure. I'm also on Instagram, but I'm most active on my podcast, which is called Your Partner's Addiction. So you can find my podcast that way, get all the information you need from that. I work with people who usually are not ready to leave. They don't want to leave, but they can't keep going on like they are. And that's exactly what my story was. So the way I help my clients is teaching them first to regulate their own nervous system and be their own sense of safety, instead of putting their sense of safety in someone who's so unstable right now and can't even take care of themselves, basically. Mm-hmm. So creating your own emotional safety, learning how to advocate for yourself and your needs and set boundaries, and then learning how to think intentionally about what you want and evaluations and all of that stuff. So the result for most of my clients is having a peaceful relationship, even if their partner hasn't changed a thing. So feeling safe and secure regardless of what's happening in their partner's addiction. Some people choose to leave, but a lot of people choose to stay, and a lot of people have kids with this person, and it's just such a more peaceful environment, even if that partner doesn't change. But like my story, in that one example, a lot of my clients have just been pleasantly surprised with how many positive changes do come in their partner once they stop trying to force it and they only focus on themselves and what they can control.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Such powerful work.
Yeah. So I do have a group program. It's called Your Partner's Addiction, and it's open to new people every month. So if you check out my podcast, you'll find out how to book a consult, and you can join every month. There's always a new opportunity.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and telling your story, Karilyn. I really appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a joy to be a part of your story. And I'm sure we're going to be hanging out at some point, again in the future, because I know we're in the same circles, in the same schools. So I look forward to just continuing to be a part of your world. For everyone listening, please check out Karilyn's work in the show notes. Even if you are not experiencing this, I'm pretty sure you know people who are experiencing a relationship with someone with addiction. So please visit her podcast, get on her email list, share her work with others. And we just want to thank you today for your time and attention. And we will see you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to sadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.